We are joined now by head coach at Xtreme Couture. This man has guided, gosh, in a matter of a couple of weeks. One was a little bit iffy, but, we'll run that one back. But has created 2 UFC champions. When I say iffy, it was a crazy situation with Aljamain Sterling. But we're not here to talk about that just today. We're here to talk about the successful win by Francis Ngannou, your new UFC heavyweight champion, and his coach who has helped guide him to this point. It's Eric Nicksick. Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well, Luke. Good to see you, man.
Is there a way to contextualize how big Saturday was? Forget about for Francis for just a second, just for you as a coach.
It still really hasn't hit home yet. I think for me, it was nice to be able to come home and see my family and just see how much relief they had, and they're the ones that really put a lot of the time and effort in. I'd say they lose a lot of time from their dad and from their husband. So just seeing how they were all on board with this victory, really more than most, that really meant a lot to me, because you just feel like all systems are go, everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction, and that part's very important for me.
How is Francis taking it all in? It's got to be a little bit overwhelming, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. He's just so proud. He's just so happy. You almost just feel like a weight's been lifted off his shoulders, Luke. He's been through such an incredible journey. And I think that was part of the narrative. I don't feel like he was supposed to win that first fight. He's seen so much resiliency, and he's come back from so much perseverance, things that he had to just get through, So winning that title the first time around just wouldn't have felt right. It almost felt like he needed to get knocked down a little bit and come back and find his path again and get back there. And that victory just felt a little bit like it was meant to be more.
All right. There's a lot of questions I have about all the pieces around it, but let's talk about the fight itself a little bit. From your perspective, how it went well, extremely well, because he won without really getting hit too hard, maybe one or two shots. But from your evaluation, how'd it go?
It went just as planned. It went perfect for me, to be quite honest with you. I think in an ideal situation, I wanted to be able to allow him to show all those little things that we worked on, to answer a lot of those critics' questions. It was also important for me to get him in the corner. I've never had him on the stool. So I think that's a valuable FaceTime for both of us, and just to be able to, I actually just kind of cracked a little joke at him right before we sat down, because the way the round went, but I was like, man, it's good to see you in the corner finally for once, and, just kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But that was the overall general consensus, Luke. And I think you picked up on it quite early, was the calm demeanor of all of us in the corner. Like, we had to remain calm ourselves, because that feeds into our fighter. So if we want our fighter to remain calm, we can't yell at him, be calm. We have to talk calm. We have to exude that same sentiment across to him. So the corner did a great job. I think everything from the start to the finish was exactly how we laid out. And, the game plan worked flawlessly.
What were you expecting from Stipe? I mean, this version of him after the DC wars, but certainly, quite experienced at this level.
100%. So, I looked at, so what I really did was, when I broke down the first Francis fight with Stipe, and then I started to look at the evolution of Stipe in his last 3 fights with DC. What were the improvements, and what did I see him pick up new skill set wise? And there was a big drastic difference in his switch crossing, his lateral movement, the way he was making angles to create angles to come in and out. He was drawing Stipe in off of his lead side to try to walk him into that straight right hand, almost draw him in kind of like a matador. So there's a lot of things that I saw there. The other thing that I really saw too was, I liked what he did in the third fight with DC, was we hung on him. He got him to the clinch, and he got underhooks, and he kind of weighed on him a lot and made DC pummel, made him work. And I think that's what I was expecting more out of Stipe in this fight. I thought he was going to try to close distance and hang on us a lot more. So we wanted to make sure that we kept center control of the octagon. That was going to be imperative for us. That was really step number 1. And that was where I really wrote in big red writing, because of the size, the proximity, and everything else, that cage control was going to be where we really felt the outcome of this fight was going to be dictated, was who maintained center control.
Okay, so let's go through some of the pieces there. I had asked my co-host, Brian Campbell, when he thought, like, when you're watching that, when did you feel like, oh, Stipe might be in trouble? I'll tell you when it was for me. When Francis was getting pushed almost up against the fence, turned it around, stuffed it, dropped his hips, and then used it to then take the back. And the reason why I said that was because, yes, that was great takedown defense, but then he switched right into offense. It went from defense to offense quickly. And the other part, Eric, that I thought was really interesting was I looked at his numbers, and the volume was what I would call right about medium. On the feet, though, what I saw was real patience. We'll talk about that in a second. But in that same scenario where he goes defense to offense, then he kind of lets loose in those close quarter moments, and these guys just don't have a prayer other than to escape. Did you feel like once you saw that, did that calm your nerves at all?
You know, I've seen it. I've been seeing this for almost 2 years now. And I get it. It's different in the room. I understand that. But when you understand what he's capable of in his athleticism, and he's doing this against high-level guys in the UFC or Bellator, for that matter, you know that the skill set is actually there. So when you drill it in within repetition, it also becomes muscle memory. So our biggest thing that we had to make sure we did was that first takedown defense. Once it's stuffed, you have to make this man pay for it. If you get your hand caught in the cookie jar and you don't get slapped for it, you're just going to keep coming back in the cookie jar. So that was our mentality, was if he comes in and he touches your leg, this fucker better pay for it. He better pay dearly to make him think about coming back in here again. So, you know, some of that stuff that we worked on was just that. We wanted to punch under the armpits, because if he turned into us, what does uppercuts turn into? They're underhooks. So let's get over-unders. Let's hit him above the head, around the head, but make sure we have that motion to come underneath those armpits. So everything was within detail. And in that grand scheme of things, with everything going on, he listened and he paid attention to his detail, and he did exactly just that. So we had to make him pay for that first failed shot.
What kind of pace were you trying to set? Like, is there a way to describe it? I mean, it wasn't hurry up, it wasn't slow down, it was something kind of in the middle. How do you view the pace that he was on?
Well, you know, for him, he's the artist. And I think he has to maintain creative control and understand where his openings are. He's one of the best athletes that I've ever been around. So when he feels something and sees something and identifies the opening, don't be afraid to take that shot, but also calculate. You have to, you know, we call it calculated chaos, or almost kind of an oxymoron, right? But like, you have to make sure that you're keeping a pace that's respectable, that Stipe fears, but you also don't have to rush anything that's really not there. You don't have to create something that's not available for you yet. So we wanted to make sure he was under the understanding that when he was ready and he felt the time was right, we trusted in his decision making. So and you kind of saw that he prod, he pulled, countered, he waited, he hit him with the few, but he kept trying to draw him back in to counter off, and that's what we ended up finishing him with.
He had one sequence, I think it was in the first round. I think this is where he landed that big right. Stipe took it well, but he did land the big right. And I think it was a double jab to the body, and then upstairs. And so let me ask, is that the combination that he was sort of thinking about, because that's like a tried and true one that works everywhere? Or was there something particularly about Stipe you were trying to key in on?
Yeah, so that combination I set up quite a bit with Francis. We call it the one body. It's right from Dwayne Ludwig. You know, I'm Dwayne guy, so we come from that system. But the one body is to show a little bit of level change. It also works offensively and defensively. So if you're a wrestler, you're showing level change to try to get the lead hand to drop to come over with the overhand. But also for a defensive standpoint, the jab to the chest is negating something coming up the midline. So if Stipe decides to change levels on us, he's getting hit with something. So that one body works very well for both sides. But we like to set that up with Francis because it keeps him in an athletic stance. It keeps him in his shell and his base low. He's not coming up tall to throw big looping overhands. He kind of stays in that athletic build to where when he starts showing level changes, you know, shit, he might shoot on me, right? But if we can get this guy guessing with that lead hand, then we can decide on what we want to do in that moment. Do we want to come over top, or maybe do you want to grab for that single leg? But obviously with Francis, we're trying to throw bombs.
How receptive was he? Like, how did he look between the first and second round? Was that a normal, like, oh, I've seen this in practice look, or anything new?
No, he looked great. In between rounds in the corner, you mean?
Yeah. Like when you actually did get a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, it was he was actually a lot more calm than he was a lot of times in practice. Like, I think he knew then after that first round that it was only a matter of time, and that the work that he put into round one was really going to trickle over into round two, and it wasn't going to be long until he found that finish.
It was even small details too. Like there was a couple times when you mentioned the lateral movement of Stipe. It's a big part of the reason why I think he's thinned out a little bit too, so he can use that mobility. to his advantage wherever possible. And I noticed there was a couple times where Francis would try to close him off a little bit, try to go after, and then you would see Stipe escape to one side, but Francis would tag him with a kick or a body shot or something as he's escaping. Even little details like that. It's so weird. And the reason why I bring that up is because that's good stuff. That's great stuff. That's winning stuff. It's just that in the Rosenstrike fight, the one before this, it was quick. It was a little bit wild. It was a little bit unruly. And this one just seemed, it was just so precise. It was clockwork. I don't know what to make of that last fight to a degree.
Yeah, and it's hard because, Francis would be the first to tell you. And I told you this on a personal level, like right after that fight, Francis was like, I don't know what the hell that was, because that's nothing that we worked on. And hey, man, it worked out. I get it. But I think that brought up a lot of criticisms to people that were like these striking enthusiasts that like that was trash. And yeah, it can be. But when you have the chin and you have the firepower that Francis does, sometimes, it's nice to be a tank and just be able to walk through people. But you know me, Luke, like I enjoy clean kills, man. I want to look precise. I like, my Dan Iges and my guys that come in and they execute the game plan to the fullest. And that's what I was happy to see out of Francis, because we work a lot on that cage control and just what you described. That's what we do. We practice that a lot. We contain. I want to keep you contained in those two choke points of the cage. We call it the gates of fire, man. Those are the choke points. Battle of Thermopylae. I want you to walk through this choke point. So you're walking into our traps. So he has one of his best attributes is his left high kick. Well, how do we get to that left high kick? Make him drift away from our power. Now our left high kick is available to us out of switched cross or out of southpaw stance. So how do we keep that guy contained is very important. Your leg work, your head work off the kick side, and your body work kind of keeps guys in that choke point.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the second round now. And I got to tell you, that first combination that dropped Stipe, Stipe's got a hell of a chin. He didn't see that one coming. And if you actually watch just his face in slow motion, you can see his eyeballs being like, whoa, where are we? Okay, so Francis was in southpaw. He faked, I think, with his right, and then had an up jab kind of up the middle, and it caught Stipe dead to rights. Is that obviously he's been working on that, but is that a signature move of his?
So we like to change the variant, whether it's out of our lead hand side or out of southpaw coming out, where it almost looks like an up jab. But Ray Sefo always would make us kind of do like a Wing Chun version of it, where the idea is not really to drop you, it's to pick your chin up, to kind of serve it on a platter. So you don't really need to hit it with a lot of power. The idea is to pick the chin up to now follow up with the right hand or whatever your power shot might be. But, fortunately for us, and Francis carries all kinds of power out of both stances. But when you start understanding if you're throwing a jab, how they're parrying or how they're defending it, then we like to change the angle of that hand to make it coming from a different angle that they're not expecting. And that's where we try to come under the armpit, or maybe if he's double parrying, maybe we'll come with a 1-3 or a jab lead uppercut to try to serve the chin. But Francis just saw a great read. We do that quite a bit. We like to change that variant of that lead hand. And that's what he got. That's what he saw.
So wait, that was so like he's the guy in volleyball. He's got one gear. It's just slamming that shit home to the opposite side of the net. That was merely supposed to pick up Stipe's chin instead of just floored him. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, that's what it's actually designed to do. That's what we try to do. And when we teach it to him or when we talk about it, we just say, like, you don't have to knock the guy out with this punch. This punch is really just to kind of pop that chin to serve it for the next thing up. And, you just understand the power this man carries, man. That punch is actually designed for a second punch to follow after.
That's crazy. All right, well, so Stipe, to his credit, scrambles, gets to his feet. He did land, I think, either a right or a left hook of his own that rattled Francis. But Francis, I mean, that was really what did Stipe in. He thought he had Francis hurt more than he did. How nervous were you during this exchange? Because even from just a basic standpoint, I'm like, playing this game with Francis, it's just not going to go your way. And it didn't. Obviously, there's more science to it than that. But what were you thinking in that very tense moment?
To be quite honest with you, Luke, I didn't see it from my perspective. I just saw Francis's back. So my angle that I had, I didn't see that hand land. So I never really caught like, oh, is he hurt? Because he didn't really wobble. It looked like he just kind of had a misstep. And then I saw Stipe, like, eyes get big, but I saw his right hand sit in his pocket. Like, he rushed forward with his right hand in his pocket. And right when I saw his hand in his pocket, I swear to you, Luke, I'm like, oh, it's over. It's over. Like, and it just, as it went through my head, instantaneously Francis threw the hook. So I was like, hey man, this guy's will lunge or lead and keep a hand in his pocket. You know what's there. So right when I saw that part, I knew Francis had that left hook coming down the pipe on him.
And dude, I mean, it's like, you know, I'm sure you've seen it. We've all seen it. The famous video of Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch. And really, it's just physics. It's force equals mass times acceleration. This was not 1 inch, but the power he generated. Yes, Stipe was coming into it. Okay, fair enough. But still, in that little space, like that check hook. This is what I go back to, Eric. It's just good shot selection, knowing which punches to throw when. He had that uppercut underneath the arm when he had that initial scramble too. Like, he's just able to make much more sophisticated reads than he used to be, or at least from the audience's standpoint, it feels that way.
Absolutely. And I think for us as coaches, if we're able to break down the reasons why, if we're able to tell him, here's why we do these things, and he understands what the grand scope of the practice is behind it, it gives him an idea of like, okay, if I'm throwing this uppercut here, but it also can culminate to an underhook, or if I'm doing this because it's going to negate that. So it gives him kind of a plan of attack and understanding why he's doing these things rather than just somebody telling him just to do it. You know, I think that's important for him, especially for his growth, understanding his fight IQ. Okay, now I know why I'm doing these things and why this coach is making me draw all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's got it. Well, that learning process is going to be different for every fighter, but that seems like, I mean, that takes years, right? It takes years to understand, why am I doing these things, right?
Yeah, you would imagine so. And I think just his learning curve is just on a different spectrum at times, and culminate that with his athleticism. You know, it's funny because you'll talk to him about these sort of things and he's not very responsive a lot of times. He'll just give you kind of a head nod. You're like, bro, are you getting any of this stuff? But he really is. He's understanding all of it. I think it's just his method of thinking and the way he processes things are just a little different than others.
What was I'm not gonna say worst case scenario, but what was a bad scenario that you guys were worried about? Obviously, the one didn't materialize, but was there a focus of camp being like, okay, in case shit gets bad, we want to work on this?
Yeah, almost kind of like that pull in case of emergency mindset. You know, like if something was going and we had this. Yeah, you know, I really thought that. Again, like we saw what we saw in the room, but that doesn't equal what you see at a championship level with the lights on pay-per-view, fighting the best to ever do it. So I think just some of those scrambles, I think some of the get-ups, the half guard get-ups and side control get-ups, you know, credit to Coach Dennis, man. Dennis Davis and I, we worked on so many little things to keep it simple. We don't need a deep half guard get-up, right? We just need a big heavyweight. How do we build base and get up? And once Francis understood that, we didn't have to really add a lot of technicality to what we had to do, but just some basics. He started to understand that, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable into the process and game plan. But you know, if we started getting those deep water territories and that breathing became heavy and all those things, yeah, I'm sure I was going to get a little bit nervous. But I was happy with the camp. I really was, and I was happy with what we focused on, and I felt comfortable with everything going in.
Were you glad he didn't end up defending a interim title? Like, he had that Rosenstrike fight and then all that time off, and then now this. Did it work out better this way for you or not?
I think so. I think so. And I think it actually made him more hungry, to be honest with you, Luke. I really do. You know, there was a lot of doubters and a lot of naysayers, and we need those people because for us, we're just built different. That pushes us, that makes us want to rise to the occasion. So I think having this time really off and focus, our main focus to be on Stipe Miocic rather than, you know, maybe a Volkov or somebody else in the mix or Curtis Blades. It really allowed us to zone in and narrow down who our focus was, and that was Stipe Miocic.
In terms of where we go next, obviously this is a conversation that happens well beyond what we're doing. The three possibilities seem another fight with Stipe, Jon Jones, and Derek Lewis. I think it's probably safe to say the Derek Lewis one is not either of our top priorities, probably not even for Derek Lewis. And then it takes us to those two. Do you have a preference about which way you'd like to see the UFC go?
No, not really. I'm a competitor, and I want to compete against the best. So I think Jon Jones is the greatest to ever do it at any weight. And just to be able to go compete against a man like Jon Jones and an unbelievable camp like Jackson Week and Brandon Gibson, just to be able to kind of get behind the X's and O's that gets me up. Like, I'm excited, you know, to for that challenge. And just to be able to be kind of in the same mix as those guys with Jon Jones moving up to that weight class, I think it just makes a lot of sense, especially just for now with live crowds coming back and, you know, getting through this pandemic and everything else. I think that fight makes a lot of sense more than anything, to be honest.
Do you, I mean, you know, reigns at the top of MMA are short-lived and they're brutal and they're difficult, but he does seem quite, I mean, we'll see how things go with Jon or what happens next, but certainly it's a very realistic possibility that Francis could hold on to this for a while. Are you a little bit worried about, or have you guys had conversations even around, hey man, here's what it might be if you actually get like really popular, like if you become a star and you start getting huge checks, what that might do? Is there any awareness of how that could change things?
Yeah, and I didn't want to rain on the parade too much, but you know me, man, like I'm very much refocused up on what the task at hand is, and I said it Saturday night. I pulled us all together, the team of the corner that you saw, and I said, look, man, the real work begins tonight. Now we have a target on our back. People know what we're capable of. There's going to be money, there's going to be fame, there's going to be this, there's going to be that, but we have to hold ourselves accountable as a team, check each other's egos, because if you're absolutely right, if this goes the way it should go, he's going to run this division for a long, long time. The only thing that can ever really harm us is just not doing the things that we did for this camp. We can't let off the gas pedal, Luke. We have to stay focused on what got us here. And you know, I look at like LeBron James and these Tom Brady's and Kobe's. When they get to the top, they work on the things that maybe, you know, LeBron's working on his free throw shooting. He's one of the greatest to ever do it, but there's always areas of improvement. And we just can't let off the gas pedal, Luke. We have to make sure we keep that same energy, because I feel the hardest fight in any man's career, whether is that first title defense. How do they react? How do they take on to that pressure, knowing that they have the belt now, and making sure that we keep that same energy.
In terms of Jon Jones sitting at 240 pounds, I was thinking about this, like, because someone asked us on the show, they go, well, did Stipe make a mistake in getting too light? But it's like, I don't think so, right? I mean, it didn't work out for him on Saturday, but it's like, dude, you're not going to get as big and strong as Francis. You might as well make speed your advantage, right? Like, if you try to bulk up and match him, I don't know that's going to serve either Jon or Stipe in any subsequent fights. It's not some bulk. It matters. You don't want to be 205, but there's a limit to that, I think.
And you got to think too, Luke, like this man has never really carried that type of weight on him. And how does that transcend into MMA? You know, that muscle mass commands a lot of oxygen. And just to think I'm going to put more muscle on and then just go and compete against a guy who carries that naturally. For him, Francis has carried this weight his whole life, and he understands what it's like. You know, it's like adding a trailer to your car. You know, like it's just a lot of added weight that you're really not accustomed to. So, you know, and I know those guys over at Wink, Jackson Wink, are gonna, you know, prepare him the best. But man, I got to be honest with you. I'm with you. Like, I don't know if adding muscle mass is the right idea. I guess that we'll have to wait and see and figure that out. But it's just really not a natural look to me for a guy like Jon Jones. He's always been long and lean and being able to kind of push a pace. So adding that extra muscle mass, you know, I don't know if that's going to work out for him or not.
Now, certainly I don't mean to besmirch it. As we started the conversation, Aljo, I think he's got a real possibility of defending his title here in his next fight. But I guess I would want to say, having had somebody, because by the time Aljo got to you, he was a very finished-ish kind of product, right? But when you got Francis, there was a lot of work to do. Let me ask you, when you first got your hands on him and you got to, you know, take the car for a test drive, so to speak, what was the biggest area of need?
I think just accuracy. I think being able to pick your shots correctly. I think to his own admission was the cardio element, the MMA fight IQ, things of that sort. But that was, I think, for me, my main focus when I really got to him was just kind of focusing on the MMA mindset, the fight IQ, picking your shots, you know, situational awareness. I think those things were very important because the athleticism was always going to make up for some of those holes. You saw that a lot, even in the Jairzinho fight, his athleticism made up for any shortcoming that we might have seen. You know, he was able to close distance and put a guy away. So for me, it was just understanding more of the game for him, and then the purpose of why we do things. So just try to give him a little bit more up here.
And then before, as we, I know you have to get going. I have to get going as well, but I want to end on this if we can, which is, look, man, you know this as well as I do. There's a lot of fighters who never get close to a title. There's a lot of coaches who they're very good coaches, but they don't have somebody, a lot of it. Like, listen, Nick Saban is a great coach. He's also a great recruiter, which goes into being why he wins a lot of national titles. In MMA, it's kind of harder to do some of that recruitment. I wonder what it feels like to be a guy who has taken someone, again, Aljo's incredible, but that raw material that Francis was, and then help guide him to this point. Obviously, Francis is going to deserve the bulk of that credit, and that's good. But as a coach, geez, man, that's it's got to feel good.
Yeah, it does, Luke. And I think, like you said, I kind of adopted an already very good athlete and product in Francis. They've done a great job with him at the MMA factory. So we got our hands on a pretty polished guy already. And I think there's some little things to shore up. But, I look at like my pride and joy is Dan Ige. We were on the regional scene together. We're coming up through the ranks together as a coach and a fighter. And I think just understanding that my fingerprints are really on Dan Ige and vice versa. He's made me the coach that I am today. He's helped push me to where I'm at. So yeah, man, we have a great system over to Xtreme Couture. Dennis Davis, Eddie Bracco, Nate, Ray, all the boys over there. We have this thing going that we really just love one another, and we all want to see each other succeed, which is important because these guys really help that system go the way it is. A lot of credit to Dennis, man. He was doing a lot of this wrestling stuff this whole camp for us. He watched a lot of tape too. He broke down a lot of stuff, and without these guys, we're not in this situation.
Well, it's been incredible to watch all of this. Dan out there just putting people's lights out too. I'm not sure what you have next. I'm sure it's going to be pretty soon here. They're not going to let you guys relax too much, but congratulations, Eric. That was phenomenal to watch. That was what I was expecting, and frankly, a lot more. And I know he's got more left in the tank. So whether it's Stipe or whether it's Jon, I don't know. I can't wait to see what's next for him. Congrats to the entire Xtreme Couture team and you as well. And thanks for making some time for us.
Hey, thank you, Luke, man. It's always good to talk to you, and always thank you for your support as well, man.
There you have it.